Kesh, Mandy, hi. Mandy, can I start with you? We're hearing a lot about a just energy transition. Just explain to me what exactly it is.
Great question, Georgie. So the just energy transition is about how do we transition towards cleaner technologies from a very predominantly fossil fuel-based economies worldwide. How do we transition to a cleaner landscape, a cleaner energy landscape, but do it in a way that is just. Do it in a way that takes care of the social impacts and do it in a way that does not leave anybody behind. So a rather inclusive process, bearing in mind there's a number of communities, a number of people that have based their entire lives on the coal mining industry. And this is why the partnership that we struck at COP26, the Just Energy Transition Partnership between South Africa and the UK, the France, US, European government and Germany was extremely important because one of the key things is who finance and how do you finance a just energy transition. And so that partnership's been all about how do we finance this just energy transition.
Well, let's talk about finance, Kesh. Why is sustainable finance so important for a just transition, and what's working well and what's perhaps leaves a little bit to be desired, room for improvement, should we say?
No, 100%, Georgie. So look, I think sustainable finance has a critical role to play in enabling a just transition. Yeah, if you think about the challenges that Mandy just talked to around making sure that nobody is left behind, that means we need to make sure that people are reskilled, that they're redeployed to different sectors of the economy, that some of our fossil fuel assets are accelerated in terms of their path to a greener transition. And not all of those moves are economically viable. And so the role of sustainable finance that can bring in concessional funding to help catalyze private sector investment into making some of these difficult moves really flow into implementation is going to be critical. Yeah? And I think the partnership that Mandy spoke about is a great example of that. Now, your question around what's working well and where are some of the challenges, I guess, look, this is a journey that we're on, right? And I think what's working well is that there is some signals and signposts globally around the global north and the global south partnering to make this a reality. Yeah? I think the deal that Mandy just mentioned is a good example of what can happen when that partnership works, right? But having said that, there are still challenges and next steps around how do we make sure that that funding that's been agreed at bilateral level now flows efficiently into the projects, the governance structures around that, the terms of finance that come with that. That's going to be the critical thing that we now need to double down on, particularly when we talk about implementation.
Mandy, what other enablers are needed to ensure a just energy transition?
Apart from the financing that Kesh just spoke about and that I mentioned earlier, regulatory enablers are extremely important. So having alignment between industrial policy, energy policy, environmental policy and financial policy are key enablers for us to get a just energy transition going. There's a number of barriers that you could inevitably get from regulatory, from legislation, from policies, from the elements that we see coming through the legislation. And if we overcome those and if we deal with them in conjunction and in a complementary manner, we can actually then really get through a just energy transition. The other enabler, I think, is a mindset shift. Now, that might seem a bit odd, but what we found in implementing a just energy transition partnership is the biggest thing to overcome is the mindset that we could actually move from fossil fuels to renewables, and in doing so, create more jobs. In fact, 2-to-1 jobs in South Africa could be created from moving from coal to renewables. So having that change management, having those mindset changes, so in other words, the awareness, the marketing, the proper lobbying and advocacy around just energy transition is absolutely crucial for it to be a success.
Nodding along there, Kesh. Mindset key, is it?
Yeah, I think 100% agree. I think that we've done a lot of thinking globally around what needs to be done, right? The macroeconomic planning, the implementation planning, but that mind shift change, that kind of catalyst for collaboration, if you will, I think that's going to be the critical thing here, because this whole transition is going to be super complex. It's going to require stakeholders across society to really work together to make this happen. And I think that mind shift change about, not just as government's problem or this is private sector's problem, but this is everybody's problem, and we need to work together to find a solution for this is going to be critical.
You say it's everybody's problem, it's going to require everybody working together. What about business?
Yeah, I think business has a critical role to play here. Yeah, if you think about where all of the people who are going to be most affected by the transition work and find their livelihoods today, it's from business, right? And so I think business needs to stand up and recognize that the net zero transition is not just about greening their business, but it's greening their business and coming out more socioeconomically just at the end of this transition. And business have, the balance sheet, the skills, and the influence in society to really drive a lot of the change. They can't do it alone, but they definitely have a catalytic role to play in this entire transition.
Kesh, Mandy, thank you so much.